Hi, I'm Sarah Hume. I'm the curator here at the Kent State University Museum, and we have a new exhibition that's just opened called A Life in Style. And I have the pleasure of being here with James Mulholland, who's the subject of this exhibition. It's an exhibition of his personal wardrobe, and he's going to give us a little bit of a talk about some of the things that are on view and how this is incorporated into his personal style. Welcome, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Sarah.
Let's start off and ask a little bit about how your personal style may have evolved over time.
So, foundation of menswear is the navy blazer and chinos to me. And here's an example of grouping of 3 navy blazers that aren't narrowly focused. The rigidity of a navy blazer is not representative here. However, each navy blazer is a riff on the classic. You can have embellishment with silk madras diamonds. This is Japanese from 1988. You have back there, when the minimalist movement came in the 90s, here is an example from the German designer Jill Sander. It's clean, however, all the edges are raw and frayed. And here you have an example from the Italian house Bottega Veneta, done in cashmere, mixed black, navy with black, with giant oversized pockets, very narrow silhouette, soft as a cardigan. Instead of a chino, a classic chino, these are actually a soft version with the coloration of a chino. Here you have gabardine and butterscotch, you have a navy fluid pajama pant, and here you have a washed and rumpled corduroy in marigold. But it goes to show that a navy blazer isn't restricted to just one thing. Here is a navy coat that is almost an elongated version of the blazer, done in a beautiful double-faced fabric from the French house Lanvin from mid-2000s. It's a double-faced fabric where they turned the hem outward to expose the gray detail, and all the raw edging and unstitched collar and lapel edges. Beautiful piece. And here shown again, why be held back with accessories? Here we have a beautiful leopard fur scarf. It's actually leopard stenciled goat fur from Dries Van Noten, and a beautiful fedora from the Los Angeles milliner Nick Fouquet.
One of the things you've talked about in terms of shaping your personal style is your fascination with film.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could talk about some elements of your personal style that really come from films that you've watched or have inspired you.
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite films visually, aesthetically, production design, costume design, was Sheltering Sky from Bernardo Bertolucci with John Malkovich. And this, to me, exemplifies Malkovich's wardrobe in Sheltering Sky with a little bit of a twist. But this is Dolce & Gabbana pieces from spring 1992, and it's a double-layered, it's a linen Saharian over a matching linen blazer, dress shirt with, the ribbed tee underneath, and narrow skinny pants anchored in caramel leather belt, and actually a patchwork silk scarf that I picked up in a market stall in Rajasthan years ago, of course finished off with the linen cap, but this was the Sheltering Sky. My fascination with Northern Africa and films around Northern Africa, this piece here, this look here is Ray Fiennes in The English Patient, and you have, of course, the aviator jacket, this time abbreviated, shortened from Dolce & Gabbana 1992 over a pair of very wide leg cargo pants with the Gurkha waistband with giant cargo pockets on the legs and open flanges. This was Gucci from 2002. And my last favorite in the collection actually is Richard Gere in American Gigolo. And here we have it in a relaxed version of that beautiful Armani wardrobe that he wore. This is actually Calvin Klein from spring 1994, but exemplifies that tonality that Richard dressed in, that Armani clothed him in for the film.
One of the things about clothes is that they really are closely linked with memories that we have of the past. Absolutely. And things that we wore them for, and events and places and people. And I wonder if there's any stories, any sort of anecdotes that these pieces remind you of when you're looking back on the clothes in the exhibition.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I would say actually the red coat The red coat has an interesting story to it. I actually abhor the color red. My friends will tell you as much. But this piece I saw on the YSL runway, and I fell in love with it. Unfortunately, by the time I actually took action with it, I reached out to the boutique in New York, and the 3 pieces that they had in stock were sold. But they did due diligence in contacting all the stores around the world. They had 1 piece left actually in Paris. Unfortunately, it was in the store window, and it was in Paris, or so they thought that was a problem. As it turned out, I actually was flying to Paris to go to a friend's wedding, and they came back and said, Jamie, there's a piece, do you want us to ship it? And I said, no, you just hold that piece, because I'm actually flying to Paris. I can carry it one way back. So actually they shipped that piece to the hotel. It was waiting for me, and I was dressed to go.
And what were you doing when you were going to Paris? Did you wear it when you were in Paris?
Yes, I actually wore it to the wedding. There was a fabulous look that's in the exhibition as well that I actually wore that coat over. But yeah, it was just wonderful because I didn't have to carry it over. Just to worry about carrying it back.
So this exhibition, which is entitled A Life in Style, covers maybe 4 decades of fashionable looks that you have put together. And I wonder if over that period of time, if you feel like your style has changed, or if there's sort of a consistency that has gone through the whole time.
That's actually a really good question, Sarah. I would say thematically, it's changed, it's morphed over time, and at the same time there's certain elements that have stayed consistent, and not really aware of that until I actually, was pulling ideas for you as representation for the exhibition. For example, the black suit back there from 1987, Comme des Garçons, Japanese. Prior to that, I was a very casual dresser. I hadn't worn a suit, so to speak, since my first communion. But when I saw that piece, something spoke to me about the sort of formality in a way, although it is a relaxed fitting jacket, but the embellishment, the beautiful silver and gold threads on the self-covered buttons, the embroidery on the lapel pins, and what was a lapel pin? I didn't even know what that was prior to that. And the beautiful pocket square tucked in that is actually ribboned lace that has been hand-formed. I just loved the formality of that piece, and that was something that was very new to me, and that sort of started a catalyst to my suitings, my wardrobe for the subsequent decade. Now go ahead, dial ahead 32 years later, and here I have a look that is still, it's interesting because the colors are still there. You still have the blacks and you have the pops of burgundy and you have the ivory, but it is completely relaxed. Some people may go, wow, does that really all work together? But I love the play of texture, the idea of a beautiful bathrobe coat done in this beautiful check and tweed over what I call a little Charlie Brown striped dip-dyed t-shirt over pajama pants in a floral pattern, anchored with this Mongolian lamb scarf, all from different designers, and how the accessories, I loved accessories as time went on. I realized what they can do to pieces that you already have in your wardrobe, how you can accessorize and bring new life to old pieces. But you have, again, another beautiful hat by Nick Fouquet from Los Angeles, and this incredible necklace from the Two Good Sisters in London. But it's interesting because the looks are very different, but the colorations are still the same, after all this time.
So you and I worked together when we were deciding what to put in the exhibition, and I wonder if you could give a little bit of an idea of your thought process on how you were selecting pieces to go into the show.
Sure. The fact that it was a menswear exhibition, and there's so few of them, as you know, I was hoping to provide the audience with as a broad range of what menswear could be that's outside of the, rigid parameters that we normally see menswear. At the same time, I wanted to select pieces that were interesting for a student as a creative, inspiring sort of corner. So, example, the piece in the corner, it's an inside-out blazer from Prada, early 2000, 2002. That's actually was a collection that was all about showing all the beautiful insides on the outside. And it was actually constructed that way, you know, to be worn, that the outside is actually visually the same as the inside. This piece, on the other hand, is a Comme des Garçons piece from 2010. Actually, I turned that piece inside out. It's a taupe canvas blazer. The lining is actually an assemblage of vintage silk scarves and that have been patchworked together, which is another love of mine. But what I found was that the inside was so beautiful, I just pulled it inside and out. So it was sort of interesting. I love the narrative that you put here of those pieces. Here we have from Comme des Garçons, mid-2010s. I don't have the date at my fingertips, but it's a classic men's coach jacket or Harrington jacket done in wool. The bottom half actually, when you come see it, is a pair of unfinished woolen shorts. You can actually see the flies, that the pattern pieces are flat, and they were actually just stitched together into sort of like a patchwork, and then mounted onto the bottom of the Harrington to create a longer coat. And again, also the prints. I mean, to look at some of the prints of the scarves and stuff is a wonderful thing, because you could see these cute little robots that accessorize in the pins and the scarf. Speaking of patchwork, as we see in the blazer, here is a Comme des Garçons piece from 2011. It's actually a two-piece coat, but the outer piece is a patchwork of wool and Bemberg lining, which also speaks to the Prada piece, and a cotton twill zip front cardigan coat. Underneath is a separate harness in gray wool that actually has an attached hood with toggle latch closures. The final piece here is actually a poly mesh that has been inkjet printed with this abstract motif, if you will, print, and it's actually askew. The entire piece is not biased, it's slightly off bias, which is causing all that twists and turns. It's a twisted piece, again, a trucker jacket that has a skirt attached to it. But I find all these sort of things very interesting for a student to see what you can actually, how you can take those defined pieces of menswear and do riffs on them that way.
So this exhibition really explores menswear. And when we think about menswear, it's sort of restricted in terms of color and texture and form. And so I wonder how you think about these restrictions when you put together your wardrobe.
Interestingly enough, I actually embrace the color palette, that, you know, the restriction of a color palette. I love those traditional menswear colors of navy, grays, blacks, taupes, as represented in this wonderful grouping. You do have the taupes, you have navy, you have shades of gray, but within that, it doesn't have to be uptight. You know, you can add wonderful pops of color, such as, you know, the terracotta sweater, the marigold gloves, this pink fox fur. You can add embellishments of, you know, brooches attached to a hat. You have brooch back there, wonderful hats, wonderful accessories, the pop of the pink sunglasses. There's a way to take that, what's perceived as sort of narrow parameters, which they are, but you can actually do a riff on them and have fun with it. You know, again, the fur, you know, the Sherpa lining in a hat, the fun print of a bag, those are the things that I've talked to you about before, about taking accessories and elevating the look. And some people love playing with color on the outside. That is their thing. They want the blazer or the, you know, the suit in red. But I found that I find these colors very rich, and it's the accessories to me that sort of expound it.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of your style icons and who you really admire and whose style has informed how you present yourself.
Sure. One I can think of is Bob Dylan. I actually was born too late to be a hippie, but I'm fascinated by the culture, especially the visual, you know, the aesthetics of that whole hippie sort of style, such as this jacket is a classic trucker style, excuse me, not a trucker, it's a classic coach jacket style that Dylan would wear. This just happens to be completely embellished in suede, hand-cut suede appliques that have been mounted on a suede foundation and beautiful nail head stud embroidery. Underneath I have a series of necklaces made of horn, wooden beads, coral, mother of pearl, turquoise, and a lovely kufi hat, actually, done in a hand-knit cotton yarn. But to me, this is sort of Bob Dylan taken to the nth degree, but it's still based on those those foundations of his wardrobe. And again, huge fan of embellishment, usually something that for decades has been solely in the world of women's wear. Here, again, another trucker jacket. I keep calling them truckers, I don't know why. A Harrington jacket, completely embroidered in gold and silver threads and metal embellishment mounted onto applique. This embroidery was actually based on the Miao people of southwestern China, but again, exemplifies that Dylan style. Although I don't think Bob would be wearing a kilt of any sort, again, from Dries Van Noten. These two pieces are from Dries Van Noten, fall 2015. Again, that beautiful metal embellishment detail on pockets and on bands and the border of the kilt skirt. All that embroidery based on the Miao people. Here, worn over a pair of skinny chinos that are sort of a cornerstone of my wardrobe. Dylan also big chino denim, with a shirt with a wonderful little foppish little tie, although Bob would not wear that. Also the embroidered Nureyev satchel, again, a shape from Rudolf Nureyev, who happens to be another style icon of mine. But again, with that beautiful free-form embroidery, long leather tassels, leather braided strap. But I just love, you know, the detail, the richness of all that metal played on sort of fundamentally menswear shapes. And finally, the one-of-a-kind bags that they did for Burberry fall 2014. Here, Christopher Bailey, who was the creative director at the time, creative lead, he actually took vintage Turkish kilims that were actually worn out and cut individual bags out of them. And just here I threw a wonderful key fob from Etro with feathers and beads, again, riffing off of that whole Dylan hippie sort of movement. And I just, that's visually something that really appeals to me. And again, lifts ordinary menswear from not being ordinary.
One of the things I know you love is outerwear.
Absolutely.
And so in this exhibition, we've looked at a particular example of outerwear, which is the trench coat. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about sort of the variations on the trench coat that we have included in the show.
Oh, yes. Trench coats, when we think of trench coats, we think of that beige, sort of rigid, you know, 50s staple of businessmen, but it can be so much more. For example, these three pieces that we assembled for the exhibition, all trench coats, each individually different. Over here we have a printed version of a trench coat, double-breasted, from Valentino, spring 2015, printed with fantastical animals. Here we have the quintessential Burberry trench, however, this time embellished in a beautiful handmade macrame of jute and hand-dyed wooden beads embellishing the front placket and the detachable collar. And here we have a beautiful color block version in taupe cotton and chocolate corduroy, color blocked, you know, with the sleeve tabs and the cuffs and the upper collar and the corduroy, asymmetrically buttoned, asymmetrically twisted pocket. And again, it goes back to the accessories. You know, it's not just a trench coat with a briefcase. It's wonderful hats, beautiful hand-painted bags, bags embroidered in beautiful silk floss and applique butterflies. So the trench coat does not have to be that beige staple anymore. There's certainly so many options as seen here.